Hello everybody, I'm back with another video for you today, and I haven't done a meta snapshot for quite some time. I don't really know why. I guess I just couldn't be bothered to gather all the decks together because it does take quite a bit of time. I do these on my own, so yeah, have to of course get the experience on ladder as well, and sometimes I look at other meta snapshots or, you know, look at decks that were played in tournaments or whatnot. So yeah, whatever. Let's just get into it. Here's my meta snapshot. I have looked at Team Leviathan's meta snapshot for a few of the decks here, and as I said, I was looking at some of the tournament decks as well to give you sort of a full picture on what the good, strong decks are. There are probably some decks that are going to be played on ladder that I don't have here. As always, bit of a disclaimer, there are probably also some strong decks that maybe aren't discovered or aren't super popular that could find a place here that would be, you know, similar in strength to decks that are on here. So let's just jump into it. At this point you've already seen Syndicate. You must have in your games. It's everywhere, people are spamming this. People aren't really playing anything else for Syndicate, just this Lined Pockets deck. And for good reason really. I mean, it just has a ton of points with Safecrackers. It has a ton of points with the Justice Safecracker combo round 1, and then just later you've got engines galore, you've got Skewer Tooth, you've got Cleaver, very powerful. Of course, with all of your crimes intimidating up, and you have so much removal, so much control because of a lot of those crimes, and, you know, Philippa, Tunnel Drill, of course, you're really able to efficiently control the board, shut down engines while also boasting a pretty large amount of points yourself. It's just a good deck. It just has a ton of points. It has a lot of ways to control, and yeah, just all around a very, very good deck at the moment. Good at pretty much everything. Next we have Araka Swarm, which can be a real pain to play against. This deck can be very difficult to beat. I'm going to have to refresh because the bug is still in the game where you see the wrong cards. CDPR, please fix. But anyway, yes, Araka Swarm, very, very powerful. People running Yrden in it. And I mean, you can even add Heatwave, you've got Natural Selection quite often, Parasite, Dorogray. So this deck has removal, and it just has billions of points. And it's very hard to stop the Swarm. You really have to be playing some kind of wide punish like Lacerate or Crushing Traps, you know, or Yrden of your own, like, to have a real chance against this. Nilfgaard can maybe take Yennefer, do something like that. You might maybe can bleed the deck and then try to do a really short round against them or push them to their limit, but genuinely a very difficult deck to deal with. Not a huge amount of decks have a great matchup against this. You've even got very good short rounds with your leader into a Swarm card and then a Yennefer or something. So this deck can be just absolutely monstrous to play against, no pun intended. And yeah, pretty interesting to see Swarm actually finally be sort of a very good deck for ladder. It's very interesting. Next we've got the Tier 2 decks. Now, Tier 2, Tier 3 I think are quite similar on this list that I've got here. Some could be moved around, you know, depending on what you think, you know, is good, bad. I think there's not a huge difference is what I'm trying to say between the decks I've got in Tier 2 and Tier 3. So let's start with Nilfgaard. Probably the only viable thing for Nilfgaard at this point is Assimilate. Some kind of Assimilate shenanigans. A lot of people playing Double Cross with Poison Package and Masquerade Ball and Usurper, just basically good Nilfgaard cards, throwing it all together, doing some Gorthugvade Cantarella shenanigans as well. There are a few people playing this in the qualifiers to good effect. Seems like a decent all-around good deck, but quite, in some ways, uncohesive in how it works. I mean, you've just got Nilfgaard playing Double Cross for provisions, a little bit of Assimilate value, kinda, throw in all the good cards, bit of removal, tool removal, poisons, Joachim, Ku, whatever, just it'll be okay. Yeah, you might want to think about adding Tawny Joust to this particular version here. We've got a Menno and a Ku with only one target, so you might want to, you know, mix and match. It's got Remedy as well, but Menno could be a bit risky, so maybe add Tawny Joust, or don't, up to you. But yeah, that's what you'd probably want to go with for Nilfgaard if you want something competitive. And then we've got Northern Realms. People still playing Witches. Not too many people. I don't think it's the most popular deck, but it probably slots into Tier 2. I was thinking about even maybe saying it's a Tier 3 deck, but I think it's probably Tier 2 worthy. Playing Yrden, of course, you kind of need some way to shut everything down from the opponent. You could run without it, but it would be a bit painful, I think, going up against all manner of different decks. that go tall, and yeah, you've got to have some way to deal with them. You have a fighting chance. You've got Margarita in there for a lock, and just basically it's the same as old witches were. They were very good before. They got nerfed a little bit, and other decks have become quite a bit stronger, so, you know, arguably this deck could fall into tier 3 as well. I think it's a decent NR deck. It's a decent deck overall, basically. Just a reliable, you know, old thing. Anyway, next, speaking of reliable old kind of decks, we've got Nature's Gift. It is a bit different to how Nature's Gift typically is played. Here we've got, you know, you used to play like a lot of removal in Nature's Gift, and now it's much more focused on sort of engine value and symbiosis. You've got Ithne, you've got a lot of other engines, the Pavco and the Hamadryads, etc. We've got Circle of Life showing up as Harold Gord, which is just wonderful. I love that. Thank you so much. But no, you've got Gezraz as well. That's sort of the main play there. So you're playing around the Gezraz, and yeah, just doing a lot of board swarm, and you have a ton of points. But it's quite interesting that it's departed from being very removal focused back in, I guess, where metas where removal was more important. Now having your own points is quite important. So Nature's Gift, a decent deck. I was also thinking about putting this tier 3 because I don't think it's super popular on the ladder, but it's a good deck, so tier 2, fair. Next we've got Blaze of Glory. You've probably seen a lot of Blaze of Glory as well, particularly at the start of the patch. It's quite refined at this point. You can play it with Morkvarg if you choose. You can take out Hjalmar, you can take out Greatswords, you can take out Svalbard Totem if you want. You can mix and match some stuff. Generally, Morkvarg not super great because you can't tutor it with Blood Eagle, so it's a bit of a wobbly tech card to add in there, but you can go for it. But yeah, Warriors is just good. Iced, of course, very strong with Yutta. I mean, you've probably encountered this deck. You've had that Greatsword and Yutta come out at the end, and it's just bloody horrible to deal with. But yeah, Skellige doesn't have too much engine value. It's kind of, you know, you've got protectors and stuff. It's kind of, I don't know, it does have actually engines. What am I talking about? It has some engines, but not like anything super mega crazy. It's just a decent deck. It's probably going to struggle against stuff like Swarm, and maybe a little bit against Syndicate, because those decks kind of just are very good and can probably push Skellige and make Iced very awkward. But this is a solid deck. This could even edge itself into tier 1 maybe. In terms of for ladder, it's a pretty decent deck, I think. Next, we have the final tier 2 deck, which is Overwhelming Hunger V. Just V. It's got to fit in tier 2 because it's just such a nasty deck. It wins against so many things automatically, essentially. If you aren't running sufficient removal to deal with the Slizzards and whatnot, then that big V is just going to come in, smash you. Yeah, pretty unfair deck. There's quite a few Yerdans running around, so that's a big downside for this deck, obviously. And you could consider throwing this into tier 3. Like, it's just kind of dependent on what people are running a lot on the ladder. If you're facing a lot of Yerdans, you got problems. If you're not facing a lot of Yerdans, yeah, you're feeling quite a bit happier. And this deck can certainly win against a lot of stuff, so provided it doesn't have a deck building auto-win matchup against it. So V, still pretty strong deck for certain ladder environments. And now tier 3. A lot of these decks could be in tier 2, I will point out. I think there's not too much of a difference between tier 2 to tier 3 again, I will say. But we have Traps, Elves, Elven Traps here. Quite a cool deck. I played a version of this, but it wasn't super refined. And I think when you have a more refined version, something like this, there's a bit of a weird choice to make with the 4Ps. You know, do you play Commandos? They're a bit awkward. Do you play Saboteur? Maybe. So make that decision for yourself. But overall, you've got a decent deck with some tool removal, actually, with Serpent Trap from Hattori if you need it. So you've got options to deal with stuff like V, maybe. You've got stuff to deal with wide boards with your double crushing traps. So this deck's quite versatile, actually, and has a lot of points with Venosiel, Eldane, Deadeye Ambush, Feign Death potential. So quite a scary deck, actually, and something you shouldn't underestimate. I think this could even creep into tier 2, as I've been saying. So yeah, pretty fun one. Next, we've got more scoia'tel. We've got some Dwarves here. I think Dwarves are probably tier 3 worthy. They kind of lack any interaction with the opponent, really. I mean, you can run Heatwave. You may even not want to do that and run just more proactive points. Maybe something like you could run more Resilience even, like a Zoltan, for example, but it's probably better to run Heatwave. But yeah, you don't have very much interaction with the opponent. you do have a ton of points yourself. So if you want to just pilot something that's a little bit brain dead, a little bit just, you know, put points on the board, don't worry too much about what the opponent's doing, then Dwarves is probably for you. It's an okay deck. It's pretty okay. It has a lot of points. It really does. So if your opponent is playing something where not interacting with them is not going to be a problem, then Dwarves are going to be having a decent shot at it. So not a bad deck at all. Probably tier 3 though. And then we've got Lippy. Lippy is still around fighting to this day. I think Lippies these days are tending to run Lacerate because you kind of need that to deal with stuff like Swarm and, you know, maybe, I don't know, just whatever. Swarm. That's the main one. You're obviously countering Tool pretty effectively with Heatwave, Curse of Corruption. You can remove engines with the Gutting Slashes and whatnot and the Lugos. But yeah, got that Lacerate in there to help a little bit now as well. Can be quite powerful. But it's Lippy. It's not the best deck ever. It really doesn't do too well on blue coin typically, because you tend to overcommit in round 1 and your short rounds are pretty good, but often your opponent can get a card over you if you push round 2. And I mean, they maybe just push you round 1 and don't have a short round 3, and then you're kind of screwed. So yeah, not the best deck ever. This is probably one of the weaker tier 3 decks, I would say. Next we have Carapace, which could also be argued to be a tier 2 deck. I think it's more tier 3 for ladder. There's quite a few things that will just shut this down. Obviously, Ciri can no longer be boosted with your Carapace leader, so she's a lot more vulnerable now, very susceptible to removal, provided, you know, if you don't get her behind Defender, or if you don't boost her with Crystal Skull, quite a lot weaker. So yeah, just the deck is more vulnerable than it used to be. It used to be pretty decent, but even then, you run into too much tool removal or answers for your stuff, you know, Purify for your Defender, maybe, you never know, Philippa, yoink this, Tunnel Drill, kill that, Heatwave, bash that in. You know, whatever it is, if you run into tool removal, you're going to have trouble. So Keltolis can be good to punish those people who are not prepared for it, but I would say it's probably fitting into tier 3. Could be tier 2, it's kind of similar to V. I guess they should maybe share the same tier. If people don't have the answers to you, then the deck is pretty decent. So, I don't know. You could make the argument this is tier 2, V, tier 3, whatever. Not too important. I feel like I've been repeating myself there. Finally, we have Miamon's Revenant Northern Realms list, which has been gaining some popularity. Just good old Revenants, but you've got Villain Trettenmirth in there now instead of Curse of Corruption, and that's pretty much the only difference, I guess. Yeah. It's just got Heatwave in. It's bugged, but you know, it does have a Heatwave. It's just Revenants. Idaran Revenants, decent deck basically. Quite punishable though, I think, which is why I put it in tier 3. If you're able to just play round 1 out and push this deck, it typically falls apart pretty effortlessly. But you're going to be able to catch some people out with it, and you're going to be able to win long rounds and just bully opponents with Revenants sometimes. With Madoc, of course. Madoc is sometimes played in these, not in this particular list, but you could even think about including that. Anyhow, that is the meta snapshot. I hope you guys enjoyed, I hope you learned something, hope it was useful. Either way, I hope you enjoyed seeing my face and my beard. It's growing, look. Every day it grows a little bit longer. I don't know where it will end up, we will have to see. Maybe just with this kind of, is this a goatee? I don't know what this is. We'll see how it goes. We've got a couple of months to go. No rush. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Return to the Scuffed meta snapshots. Subscribe for more content as always, for more videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.